Alright, everybody, for today's critical thought, we're going to be talking about the game industry's, I guess, unusual relationship when it comes to bugs and technical issues. This is sort of in response to what happened, I believe, last week regarding Hellblade Sensua. Sensua? I think that's how it was pronounced. And what happened when Jim Sterling gave it a very negative review due to running into a game crippling bug and kind of how a lot of people went after him for it. And whenever a game is released with bugs and there are people defending it, there's always that question asked as to why does the game industry, for most part, get a free pass when it comes to technical issues and bugs along that line. And that's what I want to talk about today because it is a very interesting element of game design. As we talked about before, video games are a combination of a product and entertainment, or programming and entertainment. What this means, of course, is that there's a lot that goes into making a game that's not only playable, but it's also engaging. Again, if we're talking about common programs, whether it's tax software, ringing people up, merchandise, you name it, if there's a bug there, then it's a very serious issue and needs to be fixed. But when it comes to game development, as I'm sure any game developer or indie dev watching this right now, a whole lot can go wrong. And it can go wrong in many different ways. From small issues like a character's physics breaking and you see like the whole ragdoll flailing around, to something big like the game causing a blue screen of death. And one of the major parts about being a game designer is understanding the priority when it comes to fixing these kinds of issues. And this is even more important when we talk about games that are being developed directly in the public eye thanks to stuff like early access. Now, when it comes to the finer points of fixing bugs and finding them, that is definitely beyond the scope of today's talk. Again, I am not a programmer by trade, so I can't get into the nitty gritty there. But from a design and organizational standpoint, it's very important as a game developer to be able to understand the priority and general, I guess, escalation when it comes to bugs, similar to understanding the priority when it comes to game design. For a lot of game development, bugs are usually tracked and categorized based on their actual impact on the game. When I was playing games from Arkin, they have their whole Mantis bug tracker system where people can send them bugs. It's categorized into different sections or damages to the game, and it gives Arkin a pretty good idea of what people are running into. But when it comes to building a video game, especially as an independent developer, you have to essentially pick and choose your battles. If you have to choose between fixing a bug that causes shirts to change color randomly versus a bug that overwrites your save, we all know which one you're going to focus on. And one of the challenges and one of the big points when it comes to game development is the fact that it is very easy to introduce new bugs. Whenever anything new that gets added to a game, anytime you fix a major system or change it, this can create a cascading effect of adding more and more issues. And in some cases, it just may not be worth it in the long run to fix a small bug at the risk of breaking something else. Now, of course, with that said, if we were living in a perfect world with infinite time and money, yes, we could take our sweet time and make games as close to bug-free as possible. Now, another major part about bugs in the game industry, of course, comes with the difference between consoles and the PC. As we are all well aware, a console is a closed system. My PS4 is the same as your PS4. Two people switches are the same. 1,000 switches are the same. Xbox One and the like. And because of that, it means you don't have to worry about things like compatibility issues, drivers not being updated, and all the crazy rigmarole that goes with PC or just PC gaming. I have not a game on a Mac or Linux, so I don't have any first-hand knowledge there. But the point is, when it comes to supporting a game on the PC, it is a whole lot more complicated compared to supporting a game on a console. Because fixing one bug could mess with something else. It could mess with specific drivers, specific hardware, software, antivirus, you name it. And again, it all comes back to being able to prioritize what these issues are. Now, one thing that I want to talk about today is a very common misconception when it comes to game development today versus in the past. When a lot of people talk about how games have changed from the mid 80s slash 90s into today, there's a common discussion that older games are better because they were bug free. And that is definitely not the case. Old games had bugs to them. And again, the bugs can vary from little glitches to outright game crashing and who knows what else. And the reason I know that has to go back to kind of what I've been researching with following speedrunning and the growing culture and communities built around it. And having watched a whole lot of videos on speedrunning classic games via GDQ and even just random speedrunning on YouTube, you can see that a lot of games in the past had bugs to them. Now, with that said though, it's a lot harder, or it was a lot harder to find these bugs back in the old days, with games being not as involved as they were today, and not to mention the fact that we're just dealing with different eras of gamers. Back then, games were so hard we couldn't tell what was a bug and what was a feature. Today, thanks to the internet, you can have hundreds of thousands of eyes poring over every little bit of detail of code. But when it comes to those older games, one of the things about why these games took longer to be made was the very simple fact that there were no do-overs. And this is where a lot of modern versus classic arguments do stand, or they do have a point. In the old days, there was no such thing as a day one patch, or being able to emergency release a patch after certification or anything like that. Because we're dealing with physical hard copies of games, especially with cartridges which are most likely hard-coded, if that game ships with a major bug, you can't fix that. You can fix the master copy of it, but how are you going to get that out to the hundreds of thousands of people who bought a cartridge, or even with game CDs? And again, this is why a lot of developers were very careful. And if things did end up getting too bad, there was a unusual solution to it. And it's time to bring out the props again, folks. This is Brain Dead 13 for the 3DO. Starring Fritz, although I don't know if anyone here actually knows who this guy is. But this was a game very similar to the Dragon's Lair, Space Ace kind of, entirely focuses on QTE gameplay. And despite the developer's intentions, the game also shipped with bugs. It also shipped with several discs here. So what ended up happening was there was a reproducible bug on disc 1 with one of the situations. Basically, if you do a specific choice, you can't beat the game. And I mean that literally. One choice or one of these options, if you try to do it, the QT didn't prompt properly and you would always lose. So what the developers did was, because I told them there was a problem, they mailed me out Disc 1 version 1.1. Another famous example of this is the game Killing Time for the 3DO, which also had to do a post-release emergency reprinting due to a major game bug that was found. I've heard that the original versions of that, the game are super rare and actually worth money. Sadly, by the time I bought the game, it was already all patched up. But again, the point is, older games weren't these, magical bastions of perfection. And for those of you who haven't had a chance, definitely watch a lot of speedruns of classic games, and you'll see how many speedrunners will exploit these little glitches and such to get around. Some cases, again, and actually, what I was trying to get at is that for a lot of these games, it goes back to priority. If a bug only has a 0.5% chance of actually affecting the game, it's not a do or die to leave that in. And for a lot of the glitches that we saw in games like Super Mario 64, and again the classic games, these are glitches that unless you explicitly knew about them, you would never find them out, essentially. I was watching and this is actually going to be in my presentation, there was a glitch run of Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, that if you do an exact set of instructions at the proper place, down to the exact pixel, and it works properly, you will beat the game after playing 2 stages. It will basically trick the game into playing the ending cutscene. Now again, that is an unusual bug, but what was the chance of someone stumbling upon that in the initial release? And again, in today's world, with hundreds of thousands of eyes, thanks to the internet, and people, again, being very more intelligent about what goes into game design and examining programming, it's a lot easier to find this stuff out today. But again, back in, I think it was like 95, 96, I don't remember, no one was going to find that glitch in Yoshi's Island. And if they did, wow, they must have spent a whole lot of time looking it over. But to wrap up today's critical thought, I hope it's a critical thought. It's either critical thought or industry insight. I'm still trying to decide. The point is, bugs in the game industry have a very messy relationship. Again, in a perfect world, every game would be shipped bug-free. But gamers are usually more accommodating or more willing to forgive bugs depending on the severity of the bug and, again, the pricing of the game. And again, when we talk about pricing, that is in of itself its own topic. But if I'm spending $5 to $6 on a game, and let's say a character accidentally glitches out or I have to reload, it's not a big deal. If I spend $60 on a game that doesn't work or crashes or erases my save file, you better believe there will be a lot of people pissed off. And like I said, this goes back to the perception of price. It's kind of like the difference between eating at a nondescript diner versus going to a 5-star restaurant. If I go to a diner and I'm not fully in love with my meal, it's only a few bucks. If I'm at that 5-star restaurant and the meal is disgusting, I am going to get my money back or I'm going to be complaining. But the point is, when it comes to the game industry and as game designers, it's very important to pick and choose your battles when it comes to bug fixes. Again, for a lot of game developers, they may not have that time and money to fix every single bug. And in some cases, they may not even realize there are bugs to be had. In an earlier critical thought, we talked about the importance of early access when it came to having people examining your game. And having 1,000 eyes on a game makes it a lot easier to figure out issues compared to 4 or 5. But with that said, though, there's always that cutoff point that happens. That point where the developer says, I can't work on this game anymore. We have to move on to another project. It's just going to cost us too much money to fix things and stuff like that. And depending upon where or what the state of the game is before that point, will usually determine the consumer's reactions. If the game is like 90-95% bug free, there'll be some complaints, but they'll accept it. If you say you're done working on a game and everyone is having a critical game crash or saves being wiped, again, prepare for the onslaught of negative comments. For those of you watching this right now who are an indie developer or a developer who has worked or had to do bug squashing, I guess for you, how do you determine the priority when it comes to bug fixes? And continuing from that point, how do you decide when it's just time to throw the white flag up? Either the bug is too hard to find or it's just costing too much time and money to try and fix it. Let me know in the comments below, but if you are new, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. Check back for daily discussions on game design here and on Game Wisdom, where we examine the art and science of games. Until next time, have a great day. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. And come back around 10 Eastern for regular streaming. For a collection of my writings as well as weekly podcasts on game development, be sure to check out game-wisdom.com. Follow me on Twitter at GWBycer for updates throughout the day. And to help support everything that I do, you can find me on Patreon under GW Bycer, or Game Wisdom. Your donations can help to keep things running, and when we hit some goals, it will mean more content for everyone to enjoy. So, thanks again for watching, and be sure to come back for daily discussions on game design on the Game Wisdom channel.